Joining us today for our Title Matters talk is Stan Czaja with WFG National Title Insurance Company. Thank you, Stan, for joining us here today. We hope that we could get your perspective on how the industry handled the past year and things maybe we can look forward to in this coming year. What, first, Stan, maybe were the initial fears last year when COVID hit and some of the governmental action started to come down in the market?
Sure, Brian. Well, number one, I want to thank you for having me today. Back in March of 2020, the world changed overnight, and I'm not going to lie, in the real estate industry and the title business, there was a kind of a massive panic as to what was going to happen with the market. Initial fears were that the market was going to stop, that people were going to stop buying and selling homes, and that there was going to be a complete collapse. To our surprise, 2020 turned out to be one of the best years ever in the title insurance industry, driven in a significant part by the strength of the refinance volume. I don't think anyone anticipated that rates would drop the way that they did. But after the initial, month or month and a half where we thought the market was going to collapse, we realized that we had to quickly pivot to handle this unprecedented volume in the time where our business processes were completely interrupted, and underwriters and agents both had to quickly pivot to accommodate for that.
And from the underwriter's perspective, what were some of the things or ways that you did see agents attempting to do that pivot and with underwriters working with agents with this new volume under these new circumstances?
Brian, it really was impressive to see how quickly both agents and underwriters were to adapt to these times. Both agents and underwriters had to face or overcome obstacles with employees working remotely, no longer being in the office, getting the technologies set up to allow the employees to work fully from home. And then also having to deal with the fact that, customers didn't want to necessarily come to the offices in person to conduct closings because they're fearful of their health. Not only were the customers fearful, but also the employees at the title agencies and the underwriters. So we had to figure out quickly how we were going to continue closing transactions while at the same time protecting the health and safety of both employees and customers.
And what were some of the ways then that you started to see those concerns or fears be handled by the title community?
The title community adapted very quickly, and they came up with creative ways. One example was drive-up closings. Another example was doing closings remotely. A third example was, having one side of the transaction at one office and another side of the transaction in another office to kind of limit the number of people gathering in the same location. And then also you still had a significant percentage of people who did not feel comfortable closing a transaction remotely, and they wanted to be physically present at the office. And so how do you accommodate for that while at the same time making sure the environment is safe for somebody to be there?
And what were some of the ways then that the underwriters needed to look at those new circumstances and trying to balance the expectations of both the agents as well as the consumer?
Well, the one of the biggest issues that arose was when customers couldn't be physically present at the office. How are we going to notarize their signatures? And so remote online notarization came into play. And the challenging part was that in Illinois, remote online notarization was not an approved vehicle yet. So thankfully, our governor acted quickly and implemented executive orders during this pandemic, which allowed for the temporary use of RON transactions and remote ink notarizations and a whole host of different kind of variants off of a traditional notarization process. The challenge for underwriters was, okay, how do we take these executive orders and then how do we develop guidelines for our agents to follow to make sure that they're complying with those executive orders, and so that we in turn could be comfortable insuring those transactions. So there was a big rush to get out guidelines in order for our agents to be able to use remote online notarization as a method to still close transactions.
And that definitely highlights the important role of the underwriter in transactions. The association, I think it's important also to note, is working on ongoing negotiations regarding remote notary legislation that we hope will be passed by this May through both legislative chambers and signed by the governor this summer or fall, so that some of those options continue to be available, but also that they're done in a compliant way that the industry can accept. Before we close things out, I think it's also important, Stan, maybe to touch on while the industry pivoted to some of the realities of COVID over the last year, there are still some ongoing issues. And thought maybe you could close us out by highlighting some of the things that maybe the industry is still seeing and that underwriters are still needing to look at with regards to liabilities or other risks with regards to transactions, recordings, or any other matters.
Sure. There's still a lot of issues still unresolved. We're still dealing with fairly significant gap recording issues. We're still dealing with remote online notarization issues, and we're also dealing with the ongoing pressure to move closings to fully electronic closings, where people don't have to physically appear anymore. That push for fully electronic closings started long before the COVID pandemic started, but it's been seriously accelerated ever since then. And people talk about the new norm, and I really believe that that's, the industry is heading that in that direction, where we will have within a few years fully electronic closings. And the challenge for us is, how do we get there, and how do we implement the correct processes and procedures to make sure that we can still close transactions in a safe way that preserves the integrity of the transaction and also allows the underwriters to feel confident in insuring these deals. Because we have to remember that without title insurance, people wouldn't be able to refinance their homes. People wouldn't be able to buy and sell homes. So if consumers didn't understand or appreciate the importance of the title industry before the pandemic started, I think this was a huge wake-up call for everyone to really see why title insurance is important. Without the industry, our economy in terms of refinances and purchase and sales wouldn't happen.
Great. Thank you, Stan, for your time again today and for your efforts in the industry, as well as your participation in the association. Thanks again.